Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Coming up today on The Story.
We took turns taking each other to the building site, and on the way I told my mate that I had become a Christian, or I wanted to be a Christian. And he looked at me sideways like, "Are you kidding me? You drink like a fish, and you're the biggest partier that I know." And so he was dumbfounded that I would even think about it.
The Story.
G'day, I'm Jimmy Colfax. Welcome to The Story. Well, Peter Connell grew up in a working class home near Sydney and always had a dream of recording his own music. However, his life took many detours, and it wasn't until about 40 years later that his dream finally became a reality. Today, Peter will share the ups and downs of his life story, along with some of his long-awaited music. Peter's joining us from a remote area of northern Queensland, and he's chatting with Eric Scatterbo.
Peter Connell, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Eric. Pleased to be here.
Glad to have you with us. And where exactly in northern Queensland are you joining us from today?
I'm in Cooktown, which is about 4 hours north of Cairns, and it's a beautiful place.
Okay, we're going to find out how the Lord led you to that area later on in our conversation. But let's begin where it all started. You were born and raised near Sydney, is that right?
That's right. I was born in Wollongong Hospital and grew up in a little town called Dapto near Wollongong. And I grew up in a family we weren't a church-going family or anything like that. We were just an average family. My father was a builder. My mother had 4 children. I was the youngest of 4. And we were just an average family. Didn't attend church, as I said. So church and all that stuff was foreign to me as I grew up. But I loved my sport and I loved music as I grew up.
Mm-hmm. And then skipping to your high school, in year 9, you had a special friend who gave you a Bible?
Yeah, I moved schools in high school in year 9. And as most people would know, when they move schools, it's a bit daunting when you don't know anybody.
Oh, yeah.
But this girl was kind enough to come and chat with me one day after a few weeks in the same class where nobody spoke to me. And we just got chatting, and she started to share about her life and how she had this faith in Jesus, which was absolutely foreign to me at the time. And so that kind of piqued my interest, and I shared a little bit about my philosophy of life, and that was that I kind of thought there was somebody up there, but I, didn't know who or what it may be. And so one day she asked me if I wanted a Bible to read it, and I said, yeah, why not? So I started to read the Bible because she gave me one.
And then what happened?
Well, interestingly, I was drawn to this character in the Bible called Jesus. First thing I did was, when I opened up the Bible, was just the New Testament, and I looked at the chapters and I thought that they're weird names, Matthew, Mark, and so forth. I've never seen a book like this in my life. Mm-hmm. And so I started to read the first chapter, Matthew, which I thought was the first chapter, and I was immediately drawn to this person called Jesus, just his kindness and his ability with words and language and wisdom, healing people and doing things that were quite incredible. And I found that every time I read the Bible, it actually brought peace to my heart just while I was reading it. And so that's where it started, yeah.
And your relationship with this young girl?
Yeah, we became boyfriend-girlfriend sort of thing at school. And then about a year later, so that was year 9, year later in year 10, I decided, much to my dishonor, I decided not to go out with her anymore, not to be boyfriend-girlfriend with her anymore. So I rejected her and I rejected God along with it. So I stopped reading my Bible. I stopped going to, I think we were going to a youth group that she invited me to. Mm-hmm. So I stopped doing all those things and just thought, I'm just going to do what I want. I'm not going to be a goody two-shoes anymore, because I kind of changed the way I was. I was pretty rough football player and so forth. And I kind of changed, my language changed, the way I looked at people changed. And then I just rejected it all in year 10, which was a bad move.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, if you enjoyed reading the Bible and you liked her, why did you just kind of chuck it all away?
It's a good question. I think getting down to it, I think it was probably just a very selfish thing. I wanted to go out and drink with the boys and party and do all those things that young people do in year 10. And I thought, I can't do that going to youth group or, I guess in a sense I was wanting the party lifestyle rather than following God. And so, I really didn't know God at the time. I was just really curious, I didn't read the Bible every day or anything like that. I just picked it up every now and again. But it did affect me. When I look back, I realized how much it actually affected me.
Now, another thing that was going on in your life in your young teenage years was your love for music. Where did that come from?
Well, when I went to high school, at the previous school I was at before I moved in year 9, so year 7, New South Wales, they started high school back in those days, and I think they do now. But I met a friend who actually went on to play with Tumbleweed, a band. So he was a very good guitarist. Paul Housemaster is his name. So we met in year 7 and decided to form a group, which was like a garage band. It was just the two of us. Mm-hmm. And then another friend at school said, I'll play bass. So we were both playing 6-string guitars, and the other friend joined us playing the bass. And then when I moved schools at that time in year 9, I met a drummer. I knew a drummer at that school. So he joined us, and we formed a band, and we played at the year 10 farewell. So they had a disco like they did in those days, plus our band, which was called Black Diamond back in those days. After school, we broke up. Paul was on a musical journey that was kind of going in the direction he wanted to go, and it wasn't really the direction that the rest of us wanted to go. So the band just disbanded, and I joined another blues group called Animal Farm. And so that was a 5-piece band, and we were playing the pub circuits around Wollongong, and really getting somewhere. But me rejecting God and all that, I was drinking very heavily, starting to get into drugs and all that. So it went down. My lifestyle went down, even though we were making money playing music, and everybody seemed to really enjoy it. Yeah.
So way back then, the dream of recording your own music, that was where it all started.
Yeah, so back when Paul and I were together, we had a dream of recording music, and Paul actually went on in his 20s with Tumbleweed and did that. So they've recorded several CDs. I was with Animal Farm when Paul was with them, and I remember going into a studio we had a teacher from a school who liked us and said, "Can I manage you?" right before we disbanded. And we kind of went into his house, and he had some recording equipment, very basic. We did a song, but I've never heard it. It just got lost because we were disbanded not long after that. And so I never really heard it. I can vaguely remember recording in there, but it was nothing that I ever got to keep.
Now, another thing that was going on in your life at that time was your love for sports and rugby.
Yeah, rugby league, to be precise. So as my brother was 8 years older than I, and he played rugby league for the local club in Depto, so I played. And, some people said I was, probably good enough to make NRL, the top league, if I was disciplined and did all the things that you needed to do. But I was drinking too much. I was just partying too much, and but I had a love for sport, and I think I had, most sports I have a natural ability to play. And I eventually went over to Bradford in England. So I was playing for a club called Kiama, which is not far from Depto. And a friend of a teammate on the team said, "I'm going over to Bradford Northern to play in England at the end of this season." And I said, "Wow, how do you do that?" And he said, "If you want to play, I can, see if the coach is happy to have you." So he believed in me enough to bring up the coach in England. So it was all arranged, and I went over and played with Bradford Northern. Australia came over on a tour and annihilated everybody. That they were in the days of Wally Lewis and Peter Sterling and all those, big high-profile players, Mal Meninga. Yeah, so it was fascinating.
You're listening to The Story. Today, Peter Connell is joining us from a remote area of northern Queensland to share his life journey and about his lifelong dream to record his own music. We'll hear more of Peter's story and find out how that dream becomes a reality when we return.
The Story. If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Colfax and this is The Story. We're continuing with Peter Connell, who's joining us from a remote area of northern Queensland to share his life journey and about his lifelong dream to record his own music. Now, here's more of his conversation with Eric Scatterbo.
You came into my life and set me straight.
So while you were in England and having this fun playing the sport that you loved, rugby league, you started to kind of reflect on your life. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. Interestingly enough, when I packed my bags to go to England, I put a Bible in my bag, which is interesting, isn't it? Because I wasn't really close to God. And I think I wasn't walking with God because, the lifestyle I was living. But I think deep down, I had a respect for God. And I think it was born out of those times that I read the Gospels, and seen what Jesus did. And so there was probably a fear of God in that sense. It was a little bit like putting my Bible in the bag. It was a little bit like wearing a St. Christopher necklace or something, that there'll be some sort of mercy from heaven while I travel.
Sounds like it was kind of a good luck charm or something.
Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, absolutely. But when I was in England and, after the football, after the heights and the lows of the football season, I did start reflecting on my life and reflecting back to when I actually rejected God. And I was sick of the partying. I actually just got absolutely sick of it. Sick of drinking, sick of people giving me drugs to take. And even when I didn't want them, and you just feel like you have to be part of the crowd because that's your crowd. So you kind of, if you reject that, you're kind of rejecting the crowd. So, I just got sick of it all. And I actually I pulled that Bible out of my bag and started to read it. And I thought, I was really thinking, do I actually believe in this guy called Jesus? And it really challenged me because, I had this philosophy when I was younger that, and this was born out of not having any understanding of God at all, but I just thought, okay, my life is going to go like this. I'm probably going to get married one day, buy a house, have children, do a job, work a job, and then I die. And I used to think when I was younger, what's the point of that? What does it all mean?
Yeah.
And so Jesus actually gave, the Bible actually gave me answers to those questions, even though I rejected it at first. It gave answers to that, longing to live on, and the promise of eternal life and so forth. So, I was really challenged in England about where I was heading and, if I did die, where would I go, And
then you eventually returned to Australia?
Yeah, so I came back to Australia after I was over there for 9 months and came back to Australia. And my brother had moved up to Queensland while I was away, so I moved up. I actually went up to Queensland to the Gold Coast just to see him for 2 weeks and then go back and get a job and resettle in Wollongong. And I ended up staying in Queensland. I was living with my brother at the time. I played for the local football club at Runaway Bay and playing well and doing really well. Still drinking, still partying and so forth, but still thinking, where am I going in life? occasionally reading the Bible. And so I eventually got a job on a building site. I was through the football club, they can get you jobs with local businesses and so forth. So I got a job in Surfers Paradise at Raptors Plaza. I remember working on that job site. And it got to a point where my brother and I weren't getting on, so I left his home and got my own place. And I just got on my knees one night and asked the Lord to, forgive me for my sins and to come into my life. I was sick and tired of the way I was living, and I just wanted him to take control and to, all these promises I read in this book called the Bible. I just want to know who you are. And so I did that. And then the next morning, my mate turned up. We took turns taking each other to the building site, went to the building site. And on the way, I told my mate that I had become a Christian, or, I wanted to be a Christian. And he looked at me sideways like, are you kidding me? You drink like a fish, and, you're the biggest partier that I know. And so he was dumbfounded that I would even think about it. Mm-hmm. So we got to work, and when we were in the building shed at smoko time, which is like morning tea on a building site, this older worker in the shed started mocking this guy for becoming a Christian on another building site that he was at the day before. And so my friend Brad just looked. He didn't look at me, actually. His eyes dropped to the floor, and it was like he was saying, don't you dare say that you're a Christian now. You're going to get torn apart by these guys in this shed. So I didn't. But interestingly, Eric, a Bible verse just kept going around in my mind, and it was Jesus saying, he who is not for me is against me. And I don't know why that verse, and I don't know why it just kept replaying in my head, but it made me question, where I was going once again. And I remember my brother saying years ago, I'm not religious, I'm just sitting on the fence. I'm not for God, I'm not against him. But that verse actually made me think for the first time, there is no fence. Jesus said, you're either for me or you're against me. And so I thought, well, that guy in the shed, he's definitely against you, God, but where do I stand? So I went out in the building site, and I'm working away thinking about this verse, and then I said to God, I said, if this is what it takes to make peace with you, I'm willing to do this. So I saw the guy that was mocking Christianity in the shed, and I walked straight up to him, and I said, you know how you're mocking that Christian guy in the shed at Smoko? And he went, yeah, what about it? And I said, well, I'm a Christian, and I didn't appreciate what you said. And it was at that moment, that very moment, I felt this weight just lift off my shoulders. I felt what I didn't understand it at the time, but my heart just kind of burst in a good way, like just filled up with goodness. And, I was dumbfounded at what happened inside of me. But I realized later that it was the Holy Spirit. And I went back to my shovel just full of joy and full of contentment. And I realized, I don't know why it happened that way, but it really made me feel like I was at peace with God finally.
Yeah.
That it actually happened. And so, I remember going to bed that night with a grin on my face, so happy and content with, my being. And I woke up with the same grin on my face, and I couldn't believe it. It was just, a sustained joy that is hard to explain unless you've experienced it.
Well, we're going to have to fast forward about 40 years here because we're running out of time. But to make a long story short, you eventually become a teacher and then also become a principal. How did you end up in far north Queensland?
Wow. Okay. Very quick hop, skip, and a jump. So very quickly, I locked into a church and got helped. I got mentored, just to understand what the Bible's about and just to join a fellowship, which was great, to make new friends and so forth. And then I eventually went to Bible college in South Australia, did 3 years Bible college. I went to Victoria and Warragul as a youth pastor. I was there 18 months, and then I moved to Mackay, then back to the Gold Coast, basically. But I did miss something there, Eric, which is really important, and that is that, you know, I got married at the Gold Coast before I went off to South Australia. Unfortunately, our marriage didn't work out in the end, but we have 4 beautiful children. And so Bible college was a preparation for university, because eventually, when I got back to the Gold Coast, I studied to become a teacher. But my Greek studies at Bible college helped me to become an English teacher. So that kind of set me on my way. And then I worked at Hillcrest Christian College on the Gold Coast for about 7 years. Did a year 9-10 camp up here in far north Queensland with the school that were doing a mission trip up this way. And one thing led to another, and I eventually got a job as a teacher here. And one principal so there were 2 principals before me. And I eventually got put into an acting principal role at first, and then a principal role, which I've been doing for the last 5-6 years.
But yet, still going all the way back to your dream when you were 15 years old, you still had that desire to record your own music. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that didn't leave me all through those years. I was writing songs. Mm-hmm. But I changed when I became a Christian. I changed from writing songs about me or drugs or whatever to writing songs about God. And so I had that dream, you know, since I was 15 to record my own music. And so COVID started in 2020. Mm-hmm. I was saying to the kids at school, you know, COVID's happening, you know, we're remote. So we were kind of away from all the heavy stuff that was going on with COVID in the early days. But I said to the kids at school that, you know, sometimes these things happen. Could you imagine all those people in their homes, all those artists, all those scientists, all those writers who now can do what they do? And I was telling the kids, you know, trying to inspire them to try and do these things. And then I found myself doing it even more. So I had long service coming up in 2021, in term 2. And I arranged for a motorbike ride to Darwin with a friend of mine here. He got really sick. We couldn't go on the trip. So I said, what am I going to do now? So I contacted a friend of mine in Melbourne, Steve Messer, and I said, Steve, I've had this dream to record my own music all these years. Do you know anyone that could possibly, you know, what studio I could link up with? And so he gave me 2 people's names. The first person was Phil Gordian. Phil was the drummer of PC3, and he's got his own recording studio in Melbourne. So I rang Phil, arranged a time to go down to Melbourne and record songs. First I sent him the demos, and we got there, and it was just amazing. So Phil was a great help, because I was just absolutely, even though I've been playing all these years, the recording studio was completely foreign to me.
Oh, yeah.
How it worked.
Well, unfortunately, we're quickly running out of time, but
yeah.
Let's wrap this all up. Your dream came true, and one song that you did record was one that kind of tells a little bit about your testimony. Please tell us about the story behind Hold On To You.
Yeah, Hold On To You. It really is my testimony in song. And, you know, when I wrote it, I just looked at it and went, oh my goodness, this is like my life story. So the song is really about his love, his grace, and my life in a song. So that's what that song is, and I really love it.
Peter Connell, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Eric, and I just thank you for the opportunity.
You gave me life when I had nothing. You gave me songs so I could sing. You changed my night of tears for the morning light. You changed my everything, put my heart right. And I need you like the air I breathe. And I love you 'cause you first loved me. And I'm knowing, I'm growing, I'm showing
That's the song Hold On To You by our guest today, Peter Connell. To find out more about him and his music, you can go to his website, peterconnellmusic.com. That's Connell with 2 N's and 2 L's, peterconnellmusic.com. Well, as we heard, all of Peter's life, he had a dream that he would one day record his own music. And it was great to hear how that dream has now become a reality. And not just any music, but music that reflects his strong faith in the Lord. Peter's desire is that all glory goes to the Lord for his music. Well, how about you? Is there a dream you've had for years that you've just kind of put on that back shelf and never pursued? Maybe it was to make music for the Lord, like Peter, or to write a book. Why not pursue that goal for God's glory today? As the Bible says, take delight in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, thanks for joining us for Peter Connell's story and some of his music. Until next time, I'm Jimmy Colfax, encouraging you to share your story with someone today.
The Story. Just another way Vision is connecting faith to life.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.